Ladies and gentlemen, the Calder Trophy race this year has been absolutely nutty. With the top three candidates in Macklin, Celebrini, Dustin Wolf, and Lane Hutson pretty much being Calder locks if they played in any other season. And with this being maybe the closest race in years, I wanted to talk about my Calder pick if the season were to end today in Lane Hutson of the Montreal Canadiens. We're going to be going through the Calder race today, talking about every single candidate and why I ultimately believe Lane Hutson has been the best rookie up to this point and the most impressive. So make sure you watch till the end as we go through all of the hockey talk today, and especially the Calder details, because there is so much to talk about this year, presented by BetUS TV. Not even just in the online space, but also when it comes to NHL writers, this Calder Trophy race has been extremely close. You had this poll that the NHL put out where their writers put together their votes for the Calder Trophy, and you look at the very top and it was already extremely close. Lane Hutson was 69 points, Celebrini was 66, and I think in this case, Dustin Wolf's probably regained some momentum since then. To me, it's really a three-headed race. Now, Malyficent has been quite solid too, but not nearly as impressive as the other three. Now, what's made this Calder race so fun to me is that you could go through all three of these guys, Celebrini, Hutson, and Wolf, and I think have a pretty great and definitive case for the Calder Trophy this year. All three of what these players are doing are impressive, and especially in a couple players' cases, they're doing what not a lot of players have done in their positions before, which I think is really impressive. At the end of the day, it's such a close race that it's basically like choosing your Pokemon starters. Are you a Charmander guy, Squirtle guy, Bulbasaur guy? If you're a Squirtle guy, you're actually correct. But like I mentioned, where you can make a case for every single player in the top three, let's go into why I believe Lane Hutson is the Calder frontrunner. First off, talking about the point scoring as well in the rookie race, Macklin Celebrini, of course, has the pretty obvious advantage in terms of points per game. But in Lane Hutson's case, overall, he leads all points among rookies with 53. And especially when it comes to the assist numbers, he has been an absolute playmaking dynamo this year. Not just among rookies, but among really all defensemen. You look at the defenseman scoring race this year, and Lane Hutson is already 8th among all defensemen, tied in points per game as well with Josh Morrissey, who's been one of the most productive offensive D-men over the last couple of seasons. Plus, you also look at the playmaking numbers in the assist department, and Lane Hutson is 4th among all defensemen, above players like Adam Fox, Josh Morrissey, and only behind Makar, Hughes, and Werenski, so a pretty elite crop to be paired with. Now, those assist numbers aren't really all that crazy, especially when you consider basically at the start of this season, Lane Hutson was almost immediately a leader in terms of playmaking totals for defensemen, especially when it comes to passes to the slot, pass completions. Hutson was already among an elite crop and leading the way, especially early on. And then you look at how much he's creating for Montreal at 5-on-5. When you look at the expected goals for per 60, Lane Hutson is 2nd on the team and a pretty large amount as well on the defensive side in expected goals for per 60. And especially in the goals against per 60 as well, he's about average on the team. So people saying that he can't defend, that he's one of the worst defenders in the league, I have bad news for you. And you look at the 3.04 expected goals for per 60, and it's 2nd among all rookies that have played at least a substantial amount of ice time, 500 at 5-on-5 this year, which is above players like Michkov, Stankoven, some really good offensive generators on the forward side of things. Hutson is already above them. And also, just going to drop this info and run, has a better expected goals against per 60 as well at 5-on-5 than Macklin Celebrini. But truly what has elevated Lane Hutson to this level for me is just how unprecedented his scoring has been and how good it could be, especially by the time the season is over. We look at what he's done career-wide so far, which really, including 2 games last year, basically is mostly games from this season. And you can see the fewest games to 50 career assists in NHL history among rookie defensemen. And you can see in Hutson's case, he's the 4th fastest to that mark, only behind players like Pearson, Mark Howe, and Larry Murphy. Some decent names there that Hutson is above, like Brian Leach and Cale Makar. But what gets real impressive to me is just how good Lane Hutson matches up against really some of the best rookie defensemen ever. You look especially in really the modern era and even going back before that to 1990. And the most points a defenseman has ever put up in his rookie year has been 60 with Nicolas Lindstrom, an absolute GOAT, the very best of them all in my opinion. And to be up to that type of level really does show something. We have Quinn Hughes at 56 points in 73 games, counting the few games he played in the season before his rookie year. And then you got Lane Hutson, which also counts the 2 games he played last year onto this, and in 71 games, 55 points and a 0.77 points per game, right up there with Quinn Hughes and a better points per game than Lindstrom. Now, it's extremely likely he's going to end up passing Quinn Hughes. I mean, both of them have 53 points in their rookie years, pretty much the exact same games played up to this point, but of course, Lane Hutson has some season to go. But what will be most interesting is that with Lane Hutson right now in his rookie year at 53 points, is he able to get past Lindstrom and his 60 points in 80 games? That will be the big test. I think there is the opportunity for him to do that, especially with how well Montreal's been playing as of late. But the fact there's even a chance for him to do that, to be up to that type of level, really does show something. But even if he doesn't get up to that Lindstrom level, the fact that he's up to Quinn Hughes level and likely surpassing him this season, when Quinn Hughes is one of the best defensive rookies we've ever seen and one of the best defensive prospects, now one of the best NHL defensemen in general, if not the best, you'd have the case for it. The fact that he's up to that level, really matching up to a player like that is exceptional. And again, really hard to come by. It especially gets interesting when you look at the rest of the rookie crop defensively, where you go from Lane Hutson with 53 points to 11 points in Drew Helleson. Now, this is a bit of an exception. Usually the depth when it comes to rookie defensemen isn't as bad as this year's, but still, it shows just how clear Lane Hutson is above everybody else. Last but not least, I want to showcase Lane Hutson's microstat card via JFresh's Patreon, and I think it is really illuminating, especially when you have a lot of the stigmas out there that Lane Hutson can't play defense. Well, a lot of the microstats do kind of paint a different picture. Now, even though he's down at 7% even strength war, I think a lot of that is just because of the expected goals against per 60 totals, but you look at the actual micro stats defensively, and they're pretty great. In terms of entry trans prevention, entry denial rates, exit success rate, I think Lane Hutson is a great example like Quinn Hughes was, that when you possess the puck, you're playing your own defense. When you possess it, when you have the puck, you don't have to worry about the defensive side of the puck as much. And for Montreal especially, I think for this year, that has been such a big element that they haven't had before. Somebody that can be just so dynamic with it, especially on the rush in transition. Lane Hutson is absolutely one of those players. And you look all throughout this list, and even though there are some places like the hits department that obviously Lane Hutson is going to be thriving in, he basically does well pretty much in every other category. Really, I think the main thing you can critique Lane Hutson with is that he's not the most physically engaged player, but I think he's a pretty smart defensive player. He's positionally very sound, though again, with his size, he sometimes can get beat, but that's just because of the limits that he's been placed upon. When you look at what he's actually doing out there, he's doing a lot of the hard work and a lot of the heavy lifting, even if the results aren't 100% always there. And in terms of the offense, the only thing you can really critique as well is the finishing and him not really having as many goals as you would want, but also he's a playmaker. That's what he's meant to do. He's meant to create all over the ice, and the goal scoring has been getting a little bit better as of late as well, so I think that's something that Hutson has been working on. But I think in general, he's somebody that is going to be a premier passer. That's the name of his game, the creativity and the playmaking, not as much the goal scoring. And I think in Hutson's case, he's been able to show exactly why that playmaking is so lethal. But I can point all these numbers and all these milestones for you, but when you actually do watch Lane Hutson, you're able to see just how much he transforms that Montreal team. Because when he's off the team, when he's off the ice, they are a completely different roster, in my opinion. In Lane Hutson's case, especially, that type of just pure creativity, pure possession play. He is just always energized, always making the heads-up decisions. He's just such a smart player already, such a creative one, too. I think that's a big reason why he's been able to thrive so early. Genuinely, I don't think there's many defensemen that can do what Lane Hutson is doing offensively with just how much of a pure thinker of the game he is. I mean, he is so many steps ahead, pretty much every single person on the ice. And obviously, not every single play is going to end up working out. But I'd rather a player like Lane Hutson who is trying new things basically every single shift than a player who is predictable. And in Lane Hutson's case, as many goaltenders and many forwards playing against him will tell you, he is far from predictable. And that creates so much for this Montreal team. And I think Lane Hutson is maybe the biggest reason, the biggest change why this Montreal team has been so much more competitive than they were in years past. Now, what's most interesting to me when it comes to Hutson is just how much we've seen him acclimate to this NHL schedule, because it is a pretty big jump going from the NCAA to the NHL schedules, with both Celebrini and Lane Hutson, though, really making it look like child's play. I think in Hutson's case especially, though, he was kind of slowing up a little bit heading into the Four Nations break. You could tell that rest was needed and utilized, because right afterwards, he played his best hockey. But I was expecting Hutson to be pretty solid this year, but I was expecting him to have way more inconsistencies, way more problems on defense that were obvious and needed to be solved. And even though I would say to start out the year, there were some issues there with the consistency, I think really that was only an issue in the first month. Pretty much right afterwards, he's been one of Montreal's most prolific players, shift after shift. Now, I will say this maybe comes from a bit of an offensive defenseman bias for me, the reason why he's up as my Calder pick, because I truly do cherish those type of players that can possess the puck, that can be so useful on the rush, that can get out of the defensive zone so quickly. That's why I love a player like Quinn Hughes and how much of a dynamic ability he has in every single position of the ice. Hutson is right up that alley, though, and as a rookie already is doing what even a player like Quinn Hughes couldn't do. I mean, the health that he's had this year, the consistency, it's truly unbelievable, especially for a player as short as he is. But truly in that way, Hutson is proving everybody wrong that doubt him, especially with the height and the size and the ability. I mean, Hutson has been able to be such a transformative player, and truly players that we don't get all that often. Hughes was one, Makar was one, Hutson is another. And I do think it is a factor that doesn't really get talked about as much, but it is really extremely hard, I would say, to come into this Montreal system with the fan base and the attention and all of the hype thrust upon you and actually be able to not just be able to meet those expectations, but I would say in Hutson's case, absolutely exceed them. I mean, I think a lot of people expected Hutson to be in the Calder conversation, be a pretty great rookie, but I didn't think many people would think that he could be in the case to have the most points among rookie defensemen over the last 35 years. That is such an elite group to be a part of. But to do that in the city that is Montreal, where every single person knows your name, that type of attention is hard to not just play in, but thrive in. But it's obvious that Hutson loves the big moments. He wants to be out there making those big impacts. And I think that's a big reason why he has been so successful so far, especially at the Bell Center. But because of how prolific his scoring has been among rookie defensemen really all time, when you look at what he's been able to do this year, how much he's been able to transform the Montreal defense, some of the key categories he's leading in terms of completed passes, the way he's able to pass to the slot so effectively and create so many high quality chances for his team, that's to me what's been the true difference maker and has been why he's been so impressive to me and why he is my Calder Trophy pick. So many different things have been so successful and better than I think people are giving him credit for, especially on the defensive side. He's not this brilliant defensive player. I don't think he's ever going to be, but the way he possesses the puck, the way he's able to truly take over a game, he almost doesn't need that prolific defensive ability because let's be honest, when Lane Hutson is on the ice, the other team rarely has the puck. Now, of course, I did want to give a special shout out to the other two Calder candidates who I think are absolutely amazing. And again, pretty much any other year, I think both of these guys will be slam dunks. I want to talk about Dustin Wolf especially, who I haven't mentioned as much since we've been comparing Celebrini and Hutson a little bit, but Wolf probably would be my number 2. He's been, in my opinion, one of the best rookie goaltenders we have seen in the modern era. The save percentage isn't the greatest in the world, but you got to look at what he's having to deal with in Calgary. In 42 games this year, he has a 2.63 goals against average and a 911 save percentage, which is still really good for a rookie goaltender. But it's important to look at the goals saved above expected, which takes into account the quality of chances he's facing, not just any shot that he ends up facing in general, which is what save percentage is obviously about. In Dustin Wolf's case, among all NHL goaltenders, he is 5th with 2.33, right above players like Sam Montembeault, Darcy Kemper, Andre Vasilevsky, some pretty good players. But you want to know the real reason why Calgary is still in the playoff race right now? It's because of him. How much he has just absolutely carried so many of the games he's played in this year and really just carried the Flames to wins. He has just been such a clutch goaltender already and has been a major reason why Calgary's had the success they've had. And I would say if they didn't have a player like Wolf, they would be dead in the water. They would be absolutely contending for a Misa or a Matthew Schaefer right now. What Wolf has done is really not just transform this Flames team, but transform their future as well. Really looking like already a top 10 goaltender in this league, if not even higher than that. Dustin Wolf to me was always one of the better goalies in that draft, and that's not just revisionist history. You can go back to 2019 and some of my videos back then. I absolutely loved Wolf. I think he was my 2nd ranked goaltender that year behind Spencer Knight. He was up there though, and should not have been a 7th rounder. I mean, really, when you go back to a player like Lane Hutson, really the key with both of these guys is that they were underrated because of their size. Hutson, especially the size back in his draft year at 5'8", in Dustin Wolf's case, 6 foot, being basically a tiny little guy when it comes to goaltenders. These guys were underrated, even though they had clear and obvious skill to begin with. And in that case especially, I absolutely adore small goaltenders because of the lengths at which they need to prove themselves. Dustin Wolf has continued to prove himself at pretty much every single level, whether that be at the WHL as an elite goaltender already, in the AHL practically being one of the AHL's best goaltenders as well immediately, and then also in the NHL, where he had a little bit of growing pains last year, but after about 17 games, was back to being an elite goaltender in the NHL level, which, considering what he's done at every single level before that, wasn't really all that surprising. If he does end up winning the Calder Trophy, I would not be mad at that whatsoever. I think it would finally be award voters looking at a goaltender and seeing the true value there, like they should be doing with Connor Hellebuck in this Hart Trophy race, in my opinion. But Wolf is a fantastic player and will be one of the best NHL goalies for a long time to come. And then we go into Macklin Celebrini, who also is a superb Calder candidate. I mean, we looked at the micro stats with Lane Hutson. In Celebrini's case, they're also very brilliant, which at 18 years old, and a pretty young 18 years old as well, being a June birth date, is exceptional. What Celebrini has proved this year is that he is going to be one of the best NHL players going forward, and one of the most detailed ones as well. That's something that has always been a big part of Celebrini's game, is the balance and the way in which he reads it, how mature he was. And that was a big reason why he stepped into the NCAA immediately and was the Hobie Baker winner. I guess in that respect, it shouldn't be all that big of a surprise that Celebrini is already as good as he was. I mean, he has been proving that at every single level. I just thought that there would be some growing pains with the physicality, especially with him being a smaller player and having to adjust just from the NCAA system. But we see with both Celebrini and Hutson, that hasn't really been the case all that often. And you've seen how much he's been able to lead that San Jose team in so many critical areas. And already in 58 games, 52 points, he's been such a beast, especially on the power play as well, where he's been doing so much creating for the rest of the team. Really, San Jose's future is so special because Celebrini is so special already. And I think he's somebody that will absolutely be the captain someday. I don't think there's any debate about that. He is going to lead that San Jose team to the promised land and hopefully, finally, their first Stanley Cup. And again, I feel like a broken record, just like Wolf, just like Hutson. If you had Celebrini as your Calder favorite, I would 100% see the reasoning, especially when it comes to the ages, when you have Wolf at 23 years old, Hutson at 21, and what Celebrini is doing at 18 years old. There's a pretty good argument right there for him, pretty much right there at that point. And I could absolutely see the reasonings for that. I still think Hutson, in terms of what he's doing, is a more impressive player for his position, especially when you look at the recent history of NHL statistics and just how rare it is that Hudson's producing like he is. But in Celebrini's case, he's somebody special as well that needs to be recognized. That's what makes this race so sad, man, is that I wish I could just split the Calder Trophy into 3 chunks and just give each player a piece. I mean, they all deserve it. They've all been elites. And I think it shows as well just a great future as well for the NHL that we have 3 Calder candidates that are doing everything perfectly in all 3 positions as well. Goaltender, forward, defenseman. There's just so much to look forward to, and this is why I love NHL prospects, man. Seeing the future of the NHL is just so much fun, and we are seeing it this year with these 3 guys. Now, before we go, I want to talk about today's sponsor in BetUS TV, the place to make all your hockey picks for the rest of this season, whether it be on the Calder Trophy, the daily NHL games, as well as the Stanley Cup. BetUS TV is the place to do so, and a big thank you for them for sponsoring today's video. But that is my reasonings for Lane Hutson winning the Calder Trophy this year and why this rookie race has just been so much fun to watch. But I want to know your thoughts down below on this top 3. With how close it is, let me know which starter are you choosing? Celebrini, Hutson, Wolf? Let me know all your thoughts down below. And of course, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and the notification bell for more breakdowns just like this. And share it with all the hockey fans you guys know online. And click on this card as well for all of my hockey prospects talk right in one playlist. My name is Nathan, and thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.